Good day, my Telos podcast friends. Good to see you today. We have a fantastic show. It is Michael from EOS USA. We talk really interesting developments at Telos. You will love this episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Hybrid.Games. That's our sound engineer. He makes this silky sound that's coming through your ears right now. And check out Hybrid.Games. Scott's been working on that project. Looks really interesting. Also, check out Crown.Club. That is a new community token that is focused on building communities, and I will send you some Crown if you would like. What you need to do is make an insightful comment in the comments section of this YouTube video and leave your wallet address, and I will be happy to send you a fat stack of Crown tokens to get that project moving. So today's episode, Michael from EOS USA, what we talk about dStor, we talk about history, full history nodes, light history nodes, Hyperion, what's going on with IPFS, all kinds of really new, cool information, what's going on there. And then version 1.8 coming. Then also semi-green server farms that they're running over there at EOS USA. So this, you're going to learn something. Just love on this show. It's a good one. So without further ado, I bring you Michael from EOS USA.
You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain.
The Telos Podcast.
You stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Welcome to the show, Michael. And what do you think the most interesting thing going on in Telos right now is?
Well, of course, EOS USA. Now, a lot of new things coming, moving and shaking. I'm really excited about the whole dStor platform and all of that aspect. A lot of the new projects that are coming over, Carbon and onboarding Fiat, Telos straight out of Squirrel. That's huge in my opinion. CMC, listing on CMC is a big accomplishment. That'll be a good one. I say, there's just so much to talk about, right?
Yeah, it's moving fast. That's why we're here. It's a great spot to be. We'll talk about dStor a little bit. I'd like to hear about that.
Well, and I don't even know all the magic details of it. It's all, it's a big solution package, but really, I think trying to bring some layer 2 additional solutions to the Telos stack. I mean, really EOS.io based as well, but like private data storage and, redundant load balancing based off of, locations and things along that line. Make sure you get to the closest node as opposed to just the next node. Mm-hmm. So, like I say, really, I think some of those features that'll help those Dapps take it to the next level. Like currently RAM is you throw it in there and you can get to it, or you don't store it in RAM. Well, sometimes there's some, you can get to it if you have permission or programmatic access to it, things like that. That'll kind of be some of the next level features that are needed by enterprise level businesses.
What's an example of a place where you'd want some private data storage for someone who might not be, a real world example of that? Yeah.
So like anything, the paperwork is probably your biggest thing. Say you've got like a 50-page contract or, mortgage paperwork or ID, even like if, I don't know if I'd store my ID on it, but ultimately where you wanted to be able to say, look, the system contract or the user using the Dapp through the contract can get to it and it publicly, available, immutable, things along that line. But I don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry to be able to get to it. The system contract needs to be able to control that. Mm-hmm. So RAM in general on EOS.io doesn't really allow for that. It's either on the chain and open or it's not on the chain. So this is kind of the bridge in between that says store kind of a hook to the file, but store it off chain so you don't chew up as much resources. And you can kind of have programmatic access to say you can only bridge this gap if you have permission to do so or the code says so.
And that maybe it sounds like it probably even opens the door to more like benign uses like you see on, well, you don't want to say the word Facebook here, but I'm going to do it. The site that should not be mentioned, but I mean, they even have permissions where you can let like certain people see your certain parts of your data. Would that be an area where like something where dStor could evolve into, where you have control over who sees what you have on chain?
Exactly. That because currently there's really not that mechanism natively in the EOS.io platform. Like say it's on chain and anybody can read it, or it's not. So
yeah, that is a big one, and privacy. That's been the big thing that snuck up on people, I think, or at least me, about blockchain was we're going to have this immutable private. People thought it was going to be private, just like, oh, no one's, and then all of a sudden it's the most transparent thing in the world. And when you have zero privacy, it's like, oh, I didn't realize that's how blockchain was going to work. So
there's no happy medium in there and Dapps need it. Applications need it.
Yeah. So that's going to be huge. How far along is dStor and who's working on that project, or what group of people is working on it?
So I think the Good Block crew, mainly Stephanie over there, at least who I've mostly talked to. There's several other, worker bees behind the scenes, but really kind of getting involved and got a node out there, spun up for it. It's not just, like storage. It's also state history. And I think it's going to include history. I don't know if you're familiar with Hyperion and just the whole history debacle on the chain to begin with. Kind of having that rolled in there. And I think the overall concept is developing tools and platforms that applications can use and rely on, and only if they need it. It may not be something at the core level that's needed. So not all BPs need to do it. Not all applications need it. But if you do need that, you have it available, and then you can pay for it accordingly. If it's microtransactions or subsidized, by the chain itself, and who all knows. But
and what is the current state of history nodes on Telos, and how many BPs are running them? Are there light history nodes, and how's Hyperion fitting in? And
yeah, definitely. So we're huge Hyperion shop. So been working with Igor over at Rio, who wrote Hyperion from way back when he first released it. EOS USA is known for, if you got some code, I'll run it and I'll try to break it. So we feature ads,
Yeah.
Anyway, so big fan of it. And the idea, taking a step back to kind of the background, is V1 history, as we know and love, actually was a deprecated piece of code and add-on from the beginning because they realized it's not really scalable. Did not go super geek. It stores everything in memory. Well, if you store everything for a chain that's a year and a half old with massive amount of transactions, you can assume it gets pretty big. And so that's why people like Greymass and Sweden and whatnot that run true full history nodes. It's like a $50,000 server, $40,000 server with a terabyte of RAM, Whereas on our servers, I affectionately refer to as rickshaws, we use mid-range, not as high-end equipment, but the architecture isn't requiring memory. It actually more uses disks and more mid-range or more mainstream platforms versus shove it all into memory and just use it as needed. So that all being said, over time, more and more and more BPs, mainly on the EOS chain, but then also on other ones, can't run machines that support history. And in our case, actually, we can't run V1 history because it's not compatible with some of the newer add-ons and stuff, the state history. So ultimately, we have to choose between running state history or V1 history. And obviously, we're going to go with the newer platform. So what's happened is fewer and fewer and fewer history nodes are out there and available. There are plenty of people that run light history, which is a little background. You run a little bit of history in your memory and you say, look, if I don't have it, go to somebody else to get that answer. And everybody tends to relay it, like on EOS over to Greymass, or on Telos, Marlin over at Miami, or Jesse, at Kalios. They have several others out there. But it's becoming harder and harder to find history nodes and even just to run them. So what Hyperion is kind of a new version of history, which is a little more efficient and runs on not as massive a hardware. Currently is not a direct replacement for V1, but every version that comes out, they're trying to replace a little bit more to try to remove that dependency on the original V1 history and ultimately take old Bessie out behind the barn.
Okay, so right now some BPs running a full history node is some sort of requirement of V1. We have to have that.
It's a requirement for the chain. It's not particularly a requirement on the BP level because it's somewhat of a not an excessive whatever, but it's more so than just a normal node. So not all BPs tend to run it, and of course that tends to cause issues. Well, do you have history? Do you not? Are you doing it? Are you sending it somewhere else? Which is where kind of that dStor and load balancing comes in to say, look, just tap into one space. We'll let you know where everything that you need is.
Okay. And is there a chance that multiple light history nodes can cover the same set of information that a full history node runs, a full V1 history, if there's enough people running light history?
In theory, what they figured out early on, about a year ago, whenever history really started becoming a big issue, was about 80% of the history queries are like in the last 10 actions of an account. They're really just looking for what did I just do versus what did I do since the inception of time. So they started, traffic patterns and whatnot, and realizing, hey, the majority of these requests that the full history node's still having to deal with really aren't needed from a full history node if you could just do a subset. So that's where GrayMass came out with the light history node, which basically says, look, only load a little bit into your memory, and then the way it works, they actually programmed a custom error message in there to say, look, if it comes back and you don't have it, instead of just failing, redirect it to somebody that might have those full. So the light histories definitely have helped out offload, Jesse's server from just getting pounded as hard as it could. But I mean, you still have to have somebody answering the final answer. And it's just a happy medium. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that final answer isn't necessary for the chain to necessarily move, though. I mean, that final answer could be just someone querying some old data for a Dapp.
Yeah, it definitely has nothing particularly to do with the chain moving forward. So, like, even if all history nodes just stopped or turned off or whatever, as long as us BPs were still signing blocks and API transactions, we'd still keep the chain moving. But, like, if you went to your wallet, well, you wouldn't really be able to see your history of all transactions because that's where they're pulling it from. So, it would more be a DApp-related noticing versus the chain freezing or anything like that.
Cool. And what's state history compared to the other types of history?
The V1 history? Yeah, so it kind of really gets ambiguously crossed up, but state history is not a replacement for history. What it really does is, think of it, you've got the main EOS or EOSIO node that's running and keeping a log of all the transactions, sequentially in order. Well, it's very hard to read and understand and tap into. So they developed this state history node, which what's called a WebSocket, and it's more action driven as opposed to just raw data. You know what I mean? So you can tap into it and say, hey, I want this information for this block, as opposed to spewing out, here's all the information ever. You figure out what you want. I'm trying to kind of generalize it, not super geeky, but what ends up happening is, because V1 history is trying to track it and put it into memory, and state history is tracking it and trying to put it into this WebSocket, they conflict. If one has an issue with the transaction, the other one doesn't work. So they don't work well together. You can't run them on the same node. But what's happening is many of the layer 2 solutions are starting to bolt in. That's how they access data on the chain versus raw API and things along that line. They'll tap into the state history. Like we're a Liquid Apps DSP provider. They use state history. Hyperion uses state history to read the chain data and pump it into its own database, which then returns its own history queries from a database as opposed to memory. CC32D9, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He has the Chronicle service, which is kind of an amped up consumer to state history. It takes that data, massages it, and does a little bit more, does like token balances and things like that. So it's kind of becoming the middleman for more advanced bolt-in applications to use that chain data versus just manually wading through the raw chain. Make sense?
Yeah, actually, yeah. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I get to dig into these little things that I still need to explain. So yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's a good little recap on history for people. How does, or what do you know about IPFS? I think that's something that people have been talking about lately, and that's really interesting. Where is Telos possibly at on that? What's that look like? Yeah.
Yep. So we're a big IPFS shop, have actually several layer 2 solutions. Liquid Apps uses it. Previos, which is another layer 2 solution, uses it as well. And I believe dStor is actually planning on tapping into it. They're still finalizing some of the back-end architecture and whatnot, but there are a lot of applications that are looking at it as that redundant, decentralized, free storage, but it's not just in its own in its own right really can't be used. Obviously, it's off chain. So you kind of have a happy medium in between. For instance, like worker proposal system on Telos, you upload your proposal into it. What you'll notice is it actually it stores that on IPFS, and then in RAM, it basically stores a little pointer file that says, hey, on the chain, immutably and trustable, here's the record for that file. And then IPFS actually stores the raw file. And then the two come together and say, well, you're asking for this data, but it's actually over here on IPFS. Here they are together, and here's the PDF you were looking for. But it's really a decentralized storage. It's interplanetary file system, I think is what it stands for. Started off as a garage project, and really just kind of took off as, wow, if everybody has a node and contributes a little bit here and a little bit there, fractionalize it out, and then when it's needed, pull it all back together, you get that decentralized, unlimited storage in theory.
Is that similar to, what would be the difference between that and like one of the like a Tor, or like one of those, let's say for example, one of the music sites where you can download music from 10 different people?
I would more equate it to like Amazon storage or something like that, is that you're looking for a storage space out in the cloud or out in the interweb somewhere that isn't reliant on one server and is ultimately, geo-distributed, things along that line. So as opposed to paying Amazon to have 15 servers and split your data up and put it back together, this IPFS system ultimately is the Linux version of that is, hey, I'll split it up and handle all the management and everything, inside of the code. And then whenever you need it, you just call it. Similar like you would do with Amazon storage is, here's the link to s3.amazon.com, blah, blah, blah. You just go to eosusa.ipfs.com, blah, 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 and pull your data from there, so to say.
How many block producers are running IP or supporting IPFS?
I personally don't know. I mean, a lot of that is behind the scenes. It's really, if I know what services they're running, I could know, yep, I run that too, and I know you have IPFS, but, a lot of things are still in skunkworks and behind the scenes. So, I mean, just in conversations, there are several that are aware of it. It's kind of your go-to backend for file storage. So how about this? I know Miami's running it because every worker proposal you pull up tags ipfs.miami. Or whatever their address is, but it's their IPFS node.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Is that technology? How prominent is that technology just in the normal tech world as far as IPFS? And
it's known, and I keep referring to it like the Linux of file systems. Linux has native built-in pieces that you can attach your IPFS drives and whatnot. So it's really kind of become. It was before, in my opinion, before Amazon storage, really became competitive price and or the system it is today. So most IT nerds, I would say, are familiar with IPFS. although you really normally have to have an application for it. It's not, unless you're just in the business of, hey, I'd love to run something for free for everybody else. You tend to not jump into that boat. I'm just a glutton for punishment.
Yeah. I heard that that Telos had some sort of storage solution on IPFS. Is there a bottleneck or some sort of something that holds IPFS back with the amount of data you can store? And is there
Not particularly. I think what you're referring to is kind of affectionately referred to as TIPFS was how you kind of saw it out there. And I think that's actually what's evolving into dStor. So I think they're all ultimately the same brain waves. I don't know if I'd consider them the same project because, what's the same as it was 2 months ago anyway. But.
Yeah, it's moving fast. Okay, really cool, really cool. Did you did you have anything to add about your block producer? What other parts you have moving around as far as project you guys are looking at or working on?
Well, of course, latest and greatest news is after lots of hard work and dedication to Telos, we finally ascended and amassed enough votes that people put us up into the top 21. So we're currently, I don't know, about 19, been signing blocks. So of course, that's our biggest news. That, like I say, that's a lot bigger than some people may give it credit for because we're a latecomer to the game, in the grand scheme of things, and really hard for new teams to get credit and work their way up. So it's been said before, and like I say, that's a really massive accomplishment for a non-founding team to start from the bottom and work their way up through, work and obtaining the public vote and whatnot. So that's obviously our latest and greatest, biggest news. But we've kind of got two main flagship divisions. We've got the infrastructure, which is what I kind of focus on. And then I think you've probably seen Clay on the social media side of things. And there's a few other worker bees behind. Brian does ops, David's, CEO and stuff like that. But Leslie does, some of our videos with us. But like I say, we from the infrastructure side, we want to do everything. I mean, I know that sounds tough, and it is. But the way we look at it is that, I mean, we're in a unique situation. I tend to kind of have not unlimited hardware, but easy access to spin up servers, not the best ones out there, but I can throw 10 of them at it, So what we look at is that what can we do to provide the best experience and solutions for the Dapp providers? Because as we all, I think, agree on, that's your mainstream adoption. You can have the best network in the world, you can have the best marketing, you can have the best everything. But if nobody's using the chain and there's no successful Dapps, why are we really doing it? So we want to offer everything that we possibly can to everybody, as well as bringing in technologies from other side chains or sister chains, on that line that, like Hyperion. Hyperion wasn't originally a Telos platform, but when we came over, we were, hey, I've already got these servers and farms. Why don't we spin it up? And ultimately, it's progressed to, hey, maybe that may be our next horse to pick on the history solution. So really kind of bringing those solutions together and offering everything. Look, if you need it, there's a pretty good chance that EOS USA does it. And if not, ask him about it. He'll probably do it.
Nice. Yeah, well, that was big. I was talking to Max. We were meeting in Santa Cruz the other day. We were talking about EOS USA as it's a good example. It's a testament to the Telos chain that that teams are able to, through meritocracy, work their way up into the top 21. So that big congratulations on that. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That's something that it gives. It just demonstrates that there's competition there to be had, and that block producers are still moving through the chain and things like that. That's fantastic.
Well, and the work is appreciated. It's not just a established guard or anything like that. I mean, there's several founding VPs that have for all of the reasons either had to slide their way down or even scale back their operations and drop off for a little while. I mean, we all have real life going on, so it's good to see that we always kind of call Telos the utopian EOS. What if what if governance really kind of worked? Which worked is a relative term. It's DPoS, you know, I mean, getting 21 people to agree on anything is always, you know, herding cats. But, you know, what if a worker proposal system really was able to fund projects that, you know, could do things, you know? So that's why we were really excited about the whole TLS platform. One of the reasons we jumped over.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The worker proposal, I always like to give a shout out to the worker proposal because I was personally so skeptical of how is a worker, when we were talking about it on EOS back when everyone was talking about worker proposals initially, I was a skeptic, like, okay, this is going to be a honeypot for, you know, big whales to manipulate. It's going to be a attack vector for the chain. We don't need attack vectors for the chain at this point, you know. So to see it functioning and to see it adding so much value to growing the chain is wasn't the expected outcome on my end, and so I'm a huge fan of the worker proposal at this point.
I'm just glad not to see another 150 million, $60 million worth of currency that could have done so much good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just you know, it's what a great turnout so far for the worker proposal. The you know how the TED plan has been turning out. This idea that these are resources driving the chain, paying to make things happen the chain funding itself is really cool to see. So
yeah, like I say, we all depend on the Dapps ultimately. I mean, if you don't have and it's going to be, you know, that guy sitting in his room just banging away on a keyboard that says, I got this great idea, but, you know, I mean, I don't really have the money to do it or the time to do it or the resources to do it. Telos will be happy to assist you with all of those.
Yeah. You know, I was Justin and I, he came down to Santa Cruz last weekend, and we were hanging out with our team and with him talking about what kind of the next step for Telos is and how it's going to develop. That's something we were talking about, though, is this idea that it's going to take developers. It's going to take this one random guy in his basement that comes up with the perfect app that onboards users.
We call that the killer Dapp.
Killer Dapp. And there's not a big point in, as far as like marketing goes, marketing to users and trying to get more users on Telos, because no one cares until there's something to use. Like the target market right now is a good dev, is more good devs, more people to build and more people to throw spaghetti at the wall as far as dApps go. Yeah, so we're going to start hosting meetups that in the past we've done all these meetups in San Francisco. They've been focused on users, and we realize that's a silly thing to focus on. We should be focusing on attracting developers because that's the only people that matter right now. We have to get something usable. So
correct.
Yeah. So
absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, just building on your point there. What do you think what's your feel on like the big Dapp, the area, the big Dapps there's some opportunity in?
Well, and of course, you know, the game market, that's NFTs. And I mean, blockchain is just ripe for that type of a, you know, standard and cross-platform. I mean, especially as you talk about, you know, I got this great game idea, but, you know, I can only really invest into the framework. All right, well, here's D-goods or, you know, simple assets or whatever that now your swords from another game could be used in here. Or, you know, Good Blocks has the D realms and whatnot. Hey, guess what? Now you may not have to spend all that time developing worlds and stuff, you know. So the game market is I think, you know, extremely ripe for it. As well as, you know, just other contractual simple things, you know. I mean, I always describe blockchain and smart contracts as, you know, imagine if your dollar had a little chip built in that when you paid with it, it just knew what to do. You know, like paying $1 for music. Okay, a quarter goes to the lead singer, you know, a quarter goes over to the drummer, and, you know, 50 cents goes into a community fund, whatever. You know, I mean, it's automatically all built in. No arguing, no squabbling. Code is law. Forget common sense.
Yeah, that's a killer idea. I'm gonna try to remember that one. $1 with a chip built into it. It just knows what to do. You just put your dollar out there. It'll make change. I hate change, so it becomes
right. That's why I call it Clink. You know, it's like, and of course, I mean, you cut out the middleman. You know, I mean, you cut out all the money handlers and the wait times and the, you know, well, you didn't give me my fair share. It gave you whatever it was told to give you.
Yeah, that takes away so much friction. That is a really cool thought that way. I like that. The what you were mentioning there is something else that I've been thinking about lately. Is Telos is almost like this natural incubator for Dapps. It's the spot where, okay, I have this idea. I come to the Telos chain, and like you were saying, there's there's all these resources to use, and it's almost becomes an incubator. They come in, they can reach out to developers who are going to help them. They can be assisted with RAM or resources.
Mhm.
They even have essentially a built-in marketing team with Katie Roman and CJ Anders and that part of the Telos team, and then they come on podcasts and
I was
they
going to
can,
say, and
yeah,
yourself and ours and everything like that.
yeah,
I
and
mean,
your
it's more
guys's
so. It's a
yeah, and your guys's
massive.
media. So it's like for a Dapp to come in and have tech support, have resource support, have marketing support. It's like that's what an incubator is,
Right.
connections and support. And so it's almost a decentralized incubator, which is a pretty rad selling point when we go out and recruit, start recruiting these
Mm-hmm.
the next big thing. So it's cool to think about that.
It is.
You mentioned D realms. I'm not real familiar. I've looked into it briefly, but there's so much going on. What do you know about D realms?
Well, and other than just the tidbits or the teasers or whatever that are out there, I mean, I think I looked at the article or whatever, but like I say, it's the general concept of everything kind of in the blockchain gaming world is that if you can come up with a standard, it could be shared, or sold or programmed or whatever. I mean, you can. And I think that talking about the incubation aspect of it is that, hey, you got a great game idea, you want to start. I'll call out Sir Knight or something. He wants to start a medieval jousting game or something like that. Well, hey, wouldn't it be really cool if you could just design your knights and then Dragos Keeps dragons can come in and your bonus round or something for Steam Church Knights is to fight a Dragos Keep dragon or something. What do you have to do? You have to just program into the built-in standard, and you're maybe in a dragon's lair that Dragos Keep developed, and you're fighting maybe your own dragon. Maybe you can go in and say, no, I own a dragon. I want to fight him, so that type of thing. And you don't have to develop it from scratch. You just kind of bolt into it and utilize and share that type of, if you want to, obviously.
Okay, so D realms is it's a realm that other games can plug into, other games can plug their characters into.
Kind of how I understand it is you've got your assets like your swords and your shields and your helmets and whatnot that are more individualized, but then you've also got kind of that platform underneath. And I'm sure there's plenty more, whatever they've exposed is 5% of it, right? I mean, they got some really smart, innovative folks working, so excited.
Yeah, that's killer. That's so much going on. It's fun to follow. What other things is your team up to, and maybe what's next? Like what do you see in the future you're starting to work on?
Well, like I say, I guess biggest thing we're excited about is Q3, Q4 was really when a lot of the layer 2 solutions are, they've been on the test net, they've been tinkered around and played, but, more of them starting to say, oh, okay, we've got some, apps that are on board, let's deploy to mainnet and really start truly offering these services because, we've been in dev for 6 months, so to say. Remember, I mean, the chain's only just over a year old. So, long dev life cycles typically are, right? So that's really, I'm excited that a lot of the projects we're involved with and even others that we just, know of are really going to start onboarding additional users and demoing, hey, it's not just a roll the dice and get a payout type of platform. Here's a dragon, you don't know that it's blockchain. You don't care that it's blockchain. But all these extra features that make this app are, I think, going to start really coming together as the projects start to go live.
Yeah. I wonder if, a game that's been interesting, I saw just launch on Wax was Prospectors. I wonder if there's been any talk about Prospectors coming over to Telos.
I don't know if behind the scenes anything along that. I'm familiar with it. Like I say, I'm a button pusher, so hey, yeah, I'll play it. Why not? I need some while I'm watching my nodes replay or my EOS IO builds or whatever,
uh,
EOS nights or what I keep saying is win dragons, win dragons. I'm tired of playing like
yeah,
tic-tac-toe on my phone. Give me something good.
yeah.
But
I heard.
like I say, I don't know. The prospectors is so intense. I'm not even really sure I'm playing it right. So
Yeah, yeah.
I just keep smashing buttons and trying. But I mean, it's a great idea. I mean, another one of those that can utilize the benefits of the blockchain and things along that line.
Mhm. You mentioned having your nodes replay. What's the status of 1.8?
Well, on which chain ultimately? On Telos, I can say. So there are many people that are involved with it and a lot of great, folks, but we're trying to at least drive the bus on trying to get the information out there and coordinate everybody and just do that. So we're actually scheduled, what's today, Tuesday? So in almost exactly 2 days, almost 48 hours exactly, we plan on activating the 1.8 consensus protocol on Telos mainnet. So we've already activated on Basho testnet for Telos and all went well. We did that last Monday, I think. We're working on, I just respun up the Telos StageNet, which is a copy of mainnet, but completely separate. So we can kind of vet it, what it really looks like on everybody's real data, but it not actually be the real data. So that's kind of the next level of vetting and testing for some of the additional steps. And then, like I say, on Thursday, no holds barred. I mean, we plan on firing it off. We've been involved with most of the chains in the EOS IO ecosystems execution of the 1.8 protocol. Jungle, Kylan just did EOS's yesterday morning. We fired that one off. So like I say, lessons learned and another benefit that we try to bring, we're not just one chain, we're somewhat EOS IO agnostic for that purpose. There is benefit from learning from the others' pain and suffering, or I'm not going to do it that way again. Maybe we should try it this way, So
Yeah, that's fantastic to have that. Bringing knowledge between the chains. I mean, like you're saying, it's a EOS.io ecosystem. It's there's stuff to learn. There's a lot of experiments going on out there. It's just it's cool to see that even Wax has got cool developments with NFTs going. They've got their marketplace running, which is cool to see actually be trading around in that. There's chains that everyone's.
Well, now how about this? If it's out there, we're probably involved with it.
Yeah.
So I think about the only one I'm not on is Warbly because they scaled back. So I don't think there's any slots. But other than that, like I say, we're open to running anything. I mean, I've got 50 some odd servers and more to come. So like I say, that's one of our benefits.
Yeah. So how do you have access to so many servers? Is that something that's part of your other life?
That's our green contribution back. So a couple of us work for a managed server. It's our company. So we've got a managed service company that's constantly, having hardware deprecated and brought back in. But, and maybe 5 years old, out of warranty, and maybe not ideal for a, enterprise level mission critical system. But with a little TLC or with maybe some extra parts from other things, I mean, I'm a nerd and I'm a hardware person at that. So like I say, I'll take these servers and kind of, combine them, juice them up, and be able to redeploy them for a better purpose. Whereas the majority of them, what we used to do with them, we just have what we call the boneyard in the back of one of our suites is all the computers that just come in, get stripped down, pull the drives, and then they get sent off for recycling. Well, I mean, that's not doing anybody good, So that's what we kind of take them, repurpose them, and I think I'm up to seven virtual server hosts. I've got a SAN, a storage area network over there, several switches, a couple admin machines, and I've got about 3 more servers and another SAN to take over there to keep growing and ramping up redundancy. So like I say, that's our contribution to green is because they were going to go to a landfill or a recycle shop somewhere. Well, nah, I can get some more life out of them.
What that's fantastic. What a cool story. I don't know if is that out there, that information, people know that? That's pretty cool.
We try to, put it out there. I mean, it's hard to really pitch it as a green. I mean, there are guys that are really green and carbon neutral and things like that. So I don't want to detract from, their accolades. But yeah, I mean, I refer to it as unlimited hardware, but it may not be the fastest hardware, but if I can throw 10 of them and it's not something that particularly has to be Mac Daddy, why not, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I bet that looks cool too. I bet you got all kinds of wires and it looks like a Star Wars ship or something.
I'm OCD a little bit about my wiring, so it's
Zip
not
ties.
the cleanest, but I shoot you over a picture. I think I got one. Like say, I my nerd porn, as I call it. I take my pictures, and it's basically a full rack of servers and just blinky lights everywhere.
Oh, that's killer.
Yeah.
That's very cool. That's cool. So you mentioned two other things that we'll kind of, as we go towards the tail end of the show here, you mentioned CoinMarketCap, Carbon. What do you think that means for Telos kind of right now, as far as the fiat on-ramp, and what do you see 5-10 years down the road as big picture for Telos and blockchain, things like that?
Well, like I say, I mean, it seems like, whether it's right or wrong, to be listed on CMC is, a level of legitimacy that investors, businesses, everybody just kind of looks at, and especially because of, what was on CoinMarketCap before we came over there, it's like got a little confusion, but now all that's kind of eliminated and cleared up, and we're out there in legitimate numbers and clawing our way up. So I really think that the CMC is going to help legitimize to those that may not have fully understood before, okay, you're on CoinMarketCap and on all these other exchanges, and got high liquidity, things along those lines. That just leads credence to, maybe I should look at Telos as opposed to these other chains that may not be ideal. So, like I say, that'll be a big thing. As for the Carbon, I mean, fiat to Telos, not having to go around your elbow to get wherever you're going, I think is going to be a huge onboarding for users. Obviously, I do think that as Dapps are able to more heavily integrate that, okay, now maybe the Dapps can piggyback on that, just like Squirrel's able to facilitate these services doing it. Maybe it gets expanded into the Dapps themselves and things along those lines. So that bridging that fiat gap and stable token, and peg token, stuff like that, really just adds additional features that some markets would find useful. Not everybody, but.
And how far along is that functionality as far as using your credit card to buy Telos through Squirrel?
I'm pretty sure. I personally haven't done it. But I'm pretty sure Squirrel, the latest version of Squirrel, has all the interfaces up, running, and ready. I think I saw some posts in some of the channels that people ran through and successfully bought Telos from a credit card. I think if I remember right, there's a $250 limit or something like that, unless you do the KYC verification. Although I do think I saw somebody say they uploaded their driver's license or whatever verification it was, and did get the higher limits or whatever. But I do think that's out there and starting to be further embraced.
That's exciting. That's cool. I've got my girlfriend. She's on Coinbase, but it's like getting her to go to outside, to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, or probably Ethereum, something that transfers quickly over to some decentralized exchange to buy Telos. Is like, it's not even just get on there and just buy something. And
my current path was Links, because Links tended to have, quick, easy, give them $1 or $2, whatever, and they just create the account, then go over to Coinbase, go through the extraordinary verification just to be able to buy and send transaction. We bought EOS just because I'm not paying gas or any of that, for any of the other tokens to move them around. But then ultimately, shoot EOS over to Nudex, then use Nudex to flip over to Telos. And, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I can go from a credit card straight to Telos now.
Yeah. It's like taking 3/4 of the steps out. That's fantastic.
Oh,
That is fantastic. So, cool. Is there anything you want to add? Anything that you see coming in the future? Anything that we kind of glossed over as we start to wind down the show here?
Open invitation to any of the Dapps or developers or providers or whatever. Like I say, I mean, we're big on infrastructure. If you've got a project, we're all about skunk works. I mean, give me a shot and we'll see if I can break it. So, like I say, any partnerships or anything like that that's out there, definitely get in touch with us. And not only do we maybe run it, maybe we could do some, podcasts or videos, get some information out there. So keep us in mind. We'd love to help.
Fantastic. And EOS USA is the best place to find your team on, where's the best place to find your team on socials?
Well, and we're out there in all the channels. So you'll typically see, probably I was one of the last ones to respond. We do have a Telegram channel. We tend not to use it heavily, although probably going to start shifting more to, actually, I think a group, and I need to change it back to a channel. But anyway, long story short, I mean, you can always hit me up on Telegram. I live and die off of it. So at EOS USA _Michael, or plays on Telegram as well. Like I say, we're around, but trying to get our visibility more out there.
Killer. Well, this has been really insightful. We've got, the history nodes, dStor, your semi-green server farm going there with your nerd porn, and this was a fun talk. So thank you for coming on the Telos podcast, my Telos podcast friends. That's the Telos podcast for today, and we will see you next time. Cheers.
See ya.
The money is not the prime asset in life. Time is.